JD was born in Middletown, Ohio in 1984. On the surface, he was an ordinary kid from the country's Rust Belt, but inside, his story was anything but ordinary. His mother, Bev, was an intelligent woman, a trained nurse, but with an addiction that dragged her down like a chain. She changed partners constantly, took him from one home to another, and when she couldn't take it anymore, left him with his grandparents. He had a father figure practically non-existent. His biological father abandoned him, and the other men who entered his life were more of a threat than a guide. There was yelling, hitting, drugs, and a boy growing up in the middle of it all, trying to understand what was wrong with the world. But in the midst of the disaster, there was one woman holding on as much as she could, Mama. His grandmother, a tough woman with few touches but a fierce love. If someone hurt her grandson, she'd pull out her gun. If someone told her he couldn't, she'd push them to prove otherwise. Mama didn't know how to speak beautifully, but she knew how to protect. She knew how to shout the truth. She knew how to look pain in the face without looking away. It was she who taught JD that no one was going to save him if he didn't pick himself up, and that idea, though brutal, was the seed that would change his life. Young Vance wasn't a brilliant student. He didn't have good grades or defined dreams, but he had a quiet rage, a need to break the cycle, to avoid repeating history. After graduating from high school, he decided to join the Marines, and that decision transformed him. There, amid extreme training, rigid discipline, and clear rules, he found something he'd never had before: structure. For the first time in his life, things had order, the world had logic, and he had purpose. He learned to master his mind, to resist, to think long-term, and that, in a young man who came from chaos, was revolutionary. Upon returning from military service with a new mindset and a wealth of experience, he enrolled at Ohio State University, and from there, against all odds, he managed to be accepted to Yale University, one of the most prestigious universities in the country. It was like landing on another planet. While his classmates talked about their summers in Europe, he thought about how his mother had nearly died of an overdose. While listening to professors debate global politics, he remembered how his sister had had to protect him from a fight at home. It was the same country, but in a different dimension. At Yale, he met Usha, a brilliant young woman he would later marry, a woman of Indian descent, the daughter of immigrants, with a worldview completely different from his own. But it was precisely that difference that united them. She understood the power of effort. He carried in his bones the urgency of never going back. Together, they began to build something Vance had never had: stability, peace, a future. But there was something inside him he couldn't let go of, a story that needed to be told, not to gain fame, but to understand, to let go, to never forget where he came from. Thus was born Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir that became an unexpected phenomenon. In its pages, Vance recounted not only his life, but that of an entire community, the poor whites of the interior of the country who had been ignored, judged, and forgotten. The so-called Deep America, those who didn't make the headlines but who bore the consequences of unemployment, addiction, and industrial collapse. The book wasn't a justification, it was a confession, a snapshot of a generation marked by frustration, and it came at just the right time, in the midst of a presidential election that was set to shake the world. Hillbilly Elegy was read by intellectuals who wanted to understand why Donald Trump resonated with so many voters. It was debated on college campuses, in television talk shows, and in political circles. And suddenly, J.D. Vance, the kid who couldn't even afford college, became a national voice. Some called him a hero, others a traitor, but everyone listened because he spoke from a place of hurt, not from theory. With that drive, and perhaps also a deep need to impact the system that had hurt him so much, JD decided to enter politics. It wasn't immediate. He hesitated, he questioned himself, but he finally took the plunge. In 2022, he ran for the Senate in Ohio. His campaign wasn't traditional. He addressed issues few others had addressed: addiction, broken fatherhood, working class pride, the need for personal responsibility. His style was direct, sometimes uncomfortable, but real, and he won against all odds. Since then, his name has been at the center of national debate. Some accuse him of veering toward extreme positions, of having left behind the empathy of his early speeches. But others believe it's simply the natural evolution of someone facing a system full of contradictions. Because JD isn't a classic politician. He doesn't have the fake smile or the ornate speech. He has a burning history and an ambition that doesn't ask permission. What's fascinating about Vance isn't his ideology, it's his journey. It's the idea that even someone born with everything against them can rewrite their destiny. That it doesn't matter how many times you are knocked down, but how many times you decided to get back up. His story isn't perfect, his past isn't clean, but that's precisely why he connects. Because he's human, because he stumbles, because he changes his mind, because he's full of contradictions, like all of us. And if there's one thing the Vance family story screams loud and clear, it's that your starting point doesn't determine your destiny. It doesn't matter if you were born into chaos, if your childhood was a succession of open wounds, if home was more of a war zone than a refuge. JD Vance is living proof that scars can transform into wings. His mother Bev was consumed by drugs, trapped in a spiral of broken relationships and desperate decisions. But he chose not to repeat that story. He chose to write his own. His grandmother Mama, with her explosive temper, her gun under the chair, and her harsh love, didn't teach him sweetness, but she did teach him resilience. She taught him that sometimes love isn't spoken, it's shown in how one doesn't abandon, that sometimes protection isn't gentle, but it is firm. And with every cry, every change, every emotional blow, Vance didn't break. He toughened himself up. He turned every pain into another layer of strength. He formed a suit of armor that didn't shine, but made him invincible. That armor, forged in poverty, rage, and silence, was what led him to the Senate. Today, JD Vance continues to make people uncomfortable. Some see him as a threat, others as a symbol of hope. But beyond politics, his story has a clear message. If someone raised among broken doors, addiction, and hopelessness can stand up and say, "I came from that place, and I'm here to change it," then so can you, because the Vance's true heritage isn't power, it's the fire they're made of, and that flame, once lit, there's nothing that can stop it. If this story has inspired you, if it makes you see that even from the darkest places, light can be built, subscribe and click the bell, because we'll continue to tell you stories like this one, real, painful, but full of strength. And now the question is for you. Are we ready to see more leaders like him? Do we want politicians with real stories or just figures who look good on camera? Are we ready for wounds to also be part of power? Because if JD Vance teaches us anything, it's that sometimes the heirs to power don't come in expensive suits or with illustrious surnames. Sometimes they come with scars, and those scars can move mountains.